back. Roger Stone is still here with us. I just want to go to want to visit the Ukraine, because this is a period of time in your life and Paul Manafort's life that I don't think has been fully explored in a lot of the reporting I see done. Obviously, we know that Paul Manafort was working in the Ukraine for a number of years, working on behalf of a candidate who with strong Russian ties, Yukenovich. I always get the name wrong.
Me too.
You were there in 2006, correct?
Correct,
Who were you working for?
I was working for Volodymyr Litvin, who was part of the Orange Revolution, had an independent splinter party. He would ultimately get enough seats. I think you needed 20 seats minimum to have a voice in the Rada, which is their, unicameral legislature. He would ultimately become Speaker of the legislature.
And he was more pro-U.S., pro-West.
Yes.
So
we were working against each other.
See, and that's the question that doesn't quite make sense to me. You and Paul Manafort were partners for years, friends for years.
We were partners 15 years before that.
But still, longtime friends.
Business is business, and I had an opportunity to work for a pro-Western, pro-democracy small party that was not nearly as well funded or as nationally based as Manafort's client.
If I think conspiratorially, could it be the type of situation where you might work for the opposition to the main party, but really you're working for the other?
Manafort was actually very unhappy that I was there working against his candidate. Ultimately, his candidate and mine would enter into a coalition in the legislature to block Timoshenko because she was insane.
Konstantin Kilimnik, that is a person who's now been identified in court papers this week as being person A that's pivotal in some of the Mueller investigation. He was the office manager for Paul Manafort in the Ukraine, worked in Kiev starting in 2005. So did you ever encounter him? Do you know him? Does that name ring a bell?
Never heard of him until I read his name recently in the media. Don't know the gentleman.
The other person whose name keeps coming up now with regard to you is Ted Malloch, who was an individual who was stopped at the airport, questioned by the FBI, and he says that he was questioned about you.
Yes, I have no idea what this is about. Ted Malloch is an academic based in London. He realized fairly early that there was nobody in the European community who wanted to be an advocate or a defender of Donald Trump. So as a volunteer, I think he did a very effective job. He's a good writer, and he's speaks in sound bites. He did a lot of European media for Trump. He aspired to join the administration. He's a terrific guy. I have no idea why they detained him. The idea of Ted Malloch being involved in some kind of 007 style spycraft is ludicrous.
Now, somebody who is involved in 007 spycraft often, we now know, is Felix Sater.
Yes.
Do you know Felix?
I do not. Never met Felix in my life.
Because he's traveled in Trump's world for many, many years, the same time you've traveled in Trump's world.
Well, Trump and I, however, had a falling out over Elliot Spitzer. We did not talk for a couple of years. And ironically, that's the period, according to what I've read, that Sater is in Trump's orbit. No, I don't know Mr. Sater.
Is Michael Cohen doing a good job representing the president in the Stormy Daniels case?
Frankly, I haven't had a chance to cover the case. What amazes me in the media, just haven't followed it that closely, what amazes me is the president's approval rating is moving up as the economy moves up, and he just doesn't seem to be being hurt by this whole controversy.
Do you think that there's this perception that he's now unchained, that he's sort of grown into the role of president? He feels more comfortable. He doesn't feel he needs a chief of staff, a communications director. Is he headed down a good path in that way?
Well, it remains to be seen. I mean, every president gets judged after the fact. I do think that he has made some valuable changes in his cabinet. I think John Bolton will be very good. And I'm not, as you know, a neocon. I wasn't for the Iraq War. I have had my policy differences with Bolton, but I think Bolton is more of an operative, more of an executor than he is a philosopher.
What about Scott Pruitt? Should he get rid of Scott Pruitt?
Those are really problematic allegations. I gather that he's extremely able and very capable, but you cannot drain the swamp and allow swamp-like activity.
And do you acknowledge that he's been allowing swamp-like activity, not just with Scott Pruitt, but the VA secretary had ethical issues, the HUD secretary? You go through the list, there's a lot there.
Yeah, look, I just don't think that the HUD secretary should be spending hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands of dollars on furniture. I'm glad to see that we got rid of the VA secretary, but that's because our Veterans Administration is still conducting bizarre medical experiments on dogs and puppies.
Should John Kelly leave?
Well, I think he's going to leave anyway. Why he allowed Rob Porter to be hired and promoted in view of these very serious charges of domestic abuse is kind of beyond me, other than to say I think Porter was being groomed for the job of Chief of Staff, because I believe General Kelly aspires to be Defense Secretary.
You said earlier you spoke to the president about 6 weeks ago. What did you talk about?
I honestly don't recall. When the president calls you...
How do you not remember what the president talked about?
I think we largely talked about the economy and how it was roaring back. The president sets the tone on those rare occasions.
He didn't complain about the Mueller investigation or any of these other things?
We have not discussed that. I'm quite certain his lawyers have instructed him not to talk to me about that, as my lawyers have instructed me not to talk to him about that.
Should he issue pardons again for Manafort?
He should certainly issue a pardon for General Flynn. The case against Manafort has nothing to do with the campaign, 2016, or Russia.
When was the last time you talked to Paul?
Yesterday.
How's he doing?
He is feisty and combative, and he's not going to plead guilty, and he's not going to roll over on this president. Why they keep loading up charges on him to pressure him makes no sense to me, because there's nothing that he can tell them that will make Donald Trump vulnerable. There is no Russian collusion.
Roger Stone, thank you very much for your time.
Great to be here.